everyone and welcome to my channel. I hope that you are all good. In today's video I wanted to practice doing some ombre acrylic nails as I haven't done hardly any acrylic nails in ages and I feel as though I've lost my touch a little bit, so I thought I would get some practice in and take you guys along with me. So in my previous acrylic video I did mention that I was trying out some different pop-off methods so that I don't have to keep these on my nails as they are quite long. Last time I did rubber base coat and top coat and it felt very secure, but it was a little bit trickier to pop the acrylics off the natural nail. So this time I've applied my cuticle oil, so I've done no prep really, just pushed the cuticles back. Then I've applied my cuticle oil and then I've done 2 coats of top coat, buffed my top coat, and then I come in, applied my tips and thin clear acrylic base. And then the idea is that once I've finished doing the video or practicing doing the acrylics, I can just pop them off easily. So I will jump back to mentioning about how well this worked this time round a bit further along in the video, but for now we're coming in and applying acrylics. I'm using all CJP today. So on the first nail I've placed down Snow White, blended this back, and we're doing the same here with, I think this color is called Tooth Fairy. So when you're doing an ombre, you want to place your bead of acrylic down and blend the back of that bead of acrylic into the natural nail bed area as best as you can, and then build up your color as you go towards the tip. So this way, when it comes to coming in with your second color, you can blend it over the top nicely. Now, I haven't worked with acrylic too often and I'd forgot a few little tips and tricks. So when it comes to blending back my white acrylic, it did blend back quite well, but I forgot how bright and pigmented Snow White is from CJP. It's brilliant for things like a French nail where you want that really white French tip, but on an ombre, I actually used to prefer using their milkier whites. They do have, I think, one, maybe 2 different milky whites, and they are a little bit better for ombre. So I wasn't 100% happy with how well I blended out the Snow White. So when it come to applying my pink color over the top, I did have a little bit of a difficulty, but this is what this kind of set was about for me. It was about just getting back into the swing of doing acrylic designs, and I've been a little bit out of touch. Like I said, acrylic was always one of those things that if I never kept at doing it on a regular basis, then I ended up struggling with it. And yeah, I did struggle a little bit with this set. The previous set, I was really happy of how the design turned out, but I felt as though they looked a little bit bulky. And with this set, I'd kind of got the thickness down, but I wasn't 100% happy how the design turned out. And I felt as though my cuticle application could have been a little bit neater as well. But it was good to push myself and make sure I did another acrylic set and keep at them. So on the little finger, I'm using one of the CJP pre-mix glitter acrylic. So this is a glitter and clear acrylic already mixed together. I believe this one's called Stalker, and it has a beautiful mix of holographic pink glitters and kind of like chunky mylar flakes in there as well. And I thought it looked really pretty as a base for some chunky glitters. So I applied that nice and thin, and obviously it's really easy to apply where it is already mixed in with the clear acrylic, so you just pick up a small bead and go with it. I then started applying these iridescent hearts over the top, but I didn't feel as though they were going to pop too much, so I come in with this little blue and pink heart glitter mix, but I'm just picking out the pink hearts and then I'm placing them down in just a real thin wash of clear acrylic just so they kind of hold in place. I didn't want to go full on Valentine's in this set, but I wanted a little nod towards Valentine's, and obviously we've got the pinks going on, so I thought the little hearts looked quite cute for that. So here I'm just picking them up using my wet brush and placing them down on the nail, moving them around so that not too many of those chunky hearts are overlapping, because I don't want to have any difficulties when it comes to encapsulating. And I did decide I wanted to come in and add on a few more of those iridescent hearts. So although you can't massively see it because of the glitter in the background, this is a full nail of these beautiful glitter hearts, and once they've encapsulated, it did look really cute. I'm not actually going to encapsulate them now. I'm just going to put a wash of clear acrylic over them just to hold them in place, because they hadn't set down very well. I hadn't applied too much acrylic, so they would move about and pull off when it comes to encapsulating. So I just put this wash of clear acrylic over them just to basically, so that when that dries, it's going to hold them in place and make encapsulating a little bit easier. Now with my two ombre nails, I always like to do the first color of an ombre first and leave that to set before coming in with the second color. So that's kind of why we're jumping on to the pointer finger. And on this nail, I wanted to do a marble using a lot of the shades that we've used in this set. I think we end up using all of them. So I'm going to use two fairy, Snow White, and then the pink color is Amor, which is what we're going to be using for our ombre. And then I've got clear just to help marble through them, if that makes sense. So I went in, double dipped my beads to get a base down at the cuticle area, and then I went in with wet beads of Amor, Tooth Fairy, Snow White, and then I just dipped into my clear, and I used that clear to pull through the other colors. And then I'm just gently trying to touch up the sides, going in again and just pulling that marble, as it did look a little bit plain down in the nail bed area, so I wanted to pull through a little bit more of that darker pink shade. And then it is quite cold in the room I'm doing nails, so the acrylic sets really slowly, so I was just trying to give it little taps on the sidewalls just so that it doesn't start running off the edge of the tips, because I did work with these beads of acrylic quite wet as well. Then we're going to repeat those steps to finish off the nail, so keeping my beads wet and then just pulling through them to create this marble design. Now I used to really love acrylic marbles. They were one of my absolute favorite things to do, so it was good to do one of them. Like I said, I'm a little bit out of touch, so it was far from a perfect marble, but I think the colors looked really pretty together. So once I had done the marble, I decided to add a little bit of glitter here as well. So I'm going straight in with that pre-mixed glitter acrylic, just taking a really small amount of monomer on my brush and just dipping the very tip of that brush into that glitter and acrylic mix, just because I don't want to add too much glitter to this marble. I don't want to overpower it. I just want to have little swooshes of glitter here and there. So I'm just placing that down and then just pulling a lot of it off so that we can kind of just have these little lines of glitter without there being too much. And it adds on that little hint of sparkle into the marble, and I thought it looked really pretty. So now we're going to move back to our ombre nails. Now, when I said, you know, I'd applied Snow White and it's very pigmented, I did blend it back as much as I could, but I could have done a better job of blending it back. Here, what I should have basically done is switched from using Amor to a more opaque pink shade, because Amor is a little bit more of a natural sheer pink and it works absolutely beautifully in an ombre. However, where I hadn't blended out that white enough, you could still see it through the Amor. So I could have fixed this up at this point by coming in with a more opaque acrylic, but I just didn't think when I was doing the set. As when I started out doing this set, I just picked out the colors, set everything up on my desk and just went for it. Where it weren't until like this point here where I was kind of like, oh no, this color isn't covering up the Snow White blend underneath. So I kind of kept working with it. Now both of these colors are core colors, so they don't need to be encapsulated, so you can build up the entire structure with these two. But of course, usually when you do an ombre, you cap to protect your blend from filing. So what I actually decided to do here was build up the apex area a little bit more with the Amor shade, just so that we get the opaqueness coming through, because obviously we're building up more layers of the color, so it is going to give us a bit more coverage. But then I'm just blending it down towards the tip. It's not going to cover up too much of that white where it's quite a natural pink shade anyway, but I'm making sure to pull it down and blend it out so we still keep that crisp white tip. Then when it comes to encapsulating, I only have to encapsulate from that fade down. I don't have to take any clear acrylic up to the cuticle and apex area really, because it has already been built up using the Amor. Now you can only do these if the colors or the acrylics you're using are core powders, so therefore they're designed for strengthening and building the nail. On to the ring finger, we're going to do very similar, but I don't have to build up so much thickness because obviously where we've got Tooth Fairy down, which is a pink shade, it did blend out beautifully anyway. It blended out a lot easier than the Snow White. So when it comes to doing the next part of the ombre, it's a lot easier. So I took down my first bead of Amor, placed it down at that blend area and pulled it down towards the tip of the nail. And then I'm going to come in with my cuticle bead, tilting that finger downwards so the acrylic doesn't flow back and run into the cuticles. And then I'm just tapping it into place, pulling it from side to side, and then I'm going to leave a lot of this product in that back third so that we get that nice blend. And then I'm just very gently going to blend the top of that bead of acrylic down to start creating our fade. Now if you was using a more opaque shade and you felt as though you were covering up your color underneath, you could come in with a little bit more of your color. But where this is quite a nice natural shade, it is nice for an ombre because you don't have to worry about covering up any of that color you have already applied. So now we're ready to come in and encapsulate. I'm going to go and start by encapsulating the little finger as everything has dried and set on this one. So I'm placing my first bead of acrylic down, blending it backwards slightly, and then just patting and pressing and walking this down the nail. And I did struggle with encapsulating here a little bit, and I think it was where the room was cold. The acrylic was setting so slowly and I'm really impatient. And then also I felt as though with this set I was working a little bit too much on the wet side with the acrylic, so that meant my ratio was a little bit off, so the acrylic just wasn't working as well as what it could have. But again, this is something that I just feel as though I need to get back into that swing of practicing and doing acrylics. Now here I'm coming in with my cuticle bead, and again where that acrylic felt quite wet, that's why in this set I did feel as though my cuticle application was off a little bit, just because when I was applying it, it wasn't flowing and pressing how I wanted it to, if that makes sense. Now when it comes to encapsulating on this now especially, we've not built up any thickness or any structure. There is no strength in that glitter acrylic, so we need to fully build up our nail with the clear acrylic. So I'm coming in with a third bead here just to build up that apex, and I'm kind of looking at the nail from all angles, trying to make sure that I've built up that strength and structure as much as possible. Even though I'm not keeping this set of nails on because I was practicing, I wanted to be in the good habit of making sure that I was practicing building the apex how it should be. So on to the pointer finger, we do need to encapsulate this to protect that marble and also to encapsulate in our glitter as well. Otherwise, when you start filing and contouring the nail, you're going to file that glitter straight off. So I come in with my first bead roughly halfway down the nail, pull that out towards the tip, and then I'm going to come in with my cuticle and apex bead. I'm placing this down just away from the cuticle and then tapping it up towards the cuticle, taking it to each of the sides and then blending this down to fully encapsulate. I don't need this to be a thick encapsulation layer as we have built up a lot of our nail with the core colors, but of course I do still need a little bit of it more of an apex there, and I want to be able to file and refine this nail, so I want to make sure that glitter is encapsulated. Now onto this now, as I mentioned, when it comes to encapsulating, I'm going to predominantly focus my clear acrylic on from that blend area down. So I placed this bead down, blended it backwards just so there was no shadowing and there's a nice smooth layer of acrylic, and then I'm just pulling this down towards the tip of the nail. And it was nice because I didn't end up with a too bulky nail, because obviously the tip's quite thin. All it has got is our thin base layer and then a thin layer of Snow White. So when it comes to encapsulated, I was quite happy with the overall thickness of this nail down at the tip area, but I did feel as though that cuticle and apex area was a little bit bulky where I'd layered up my Amor pink acrylic just to get that nicer blend. So I did have to faff a little bit to try and even it out, because I didn't want to have to file off too much of the pink and then you're going to be removing the work you've done anyway, if that makes sense. So I just thickened up the tip a little bit, nothing too drastic, and again I could fix everything up when it comes to finish filing. When it comes to encapsulating this now, I actually started at the tip of the nail, sorry, at the cuticle area of the nail, pressed this bead of acrylic into place at the cuticle, but then noticed I had a little piece of glitter in there, so I had to get rid of that, and then I just started blending this down. here I was kind of just struggling a little bit with the clear acrylic and with the ratio of that. I could feel that every bead I picked up, I just wasn't picking it up thick enough. And again, I kind of just need to go back to basics where I've not done acrylics in so long and get more into the swing of it. Now for my acrylics here, by the way, I am using all CJP apart from my clear acrylic. My clear is from Diamond Nail Supplies, and it is my absolute favorite clear acrylic to work with because the clarity on it is absolutely beautiful, and it is called Clarity, funny enough, and it's just a beautiful acrylic to work with. I do have a discount code for Diamond Nail Supplies, which is Amanda10, and that gets you 10% off, so I will leave that in the description box below. So once I had finished encapsulating, it was time to move on to filing. So I'm going to start off taking the 100 grit side of my file and kind of map out the shape that I want this nail to be, because obviously when you kind of apply your tips and your clear base, I usually do a lot of my shaping then, but then you lose that sharp shape when you're applying your acrylic, especially if you've applied it a little bit too bulky like I had here. So I just mapped out that shape again, and then I come in with my file, start going from side wall, up that side wall, around the apex and cuticle area, and then up the other side wall. And then because this nail was a little bit bulky, I did spend a little bit of time debulking those areas where they was a little bit thick and uneven. And then I'm coming over the entire nail, just smoothing everything out, checking it from all angles, making sure I'm happy, or as happy as I could be. And then I'll come in and fix up the shape finally, just by coming in. I like to use both the 100 and 180 grit side of my file to do the finish shaping, but here you can see I'm just checking any areas, going in around that cuticle area with the 180 grit side of my file, just because it's a little bit softer going around there where you've got to be a bit more mindful that you don't hit the cuticles. So I'm coming in with that 180 grit side just to neaten up that cuticle a little bit where it was a little bit thick and bulky. And then here you can see I'm just doing a last little bit of finish filing to get that nice sharp shape in, and I'm constantly stopping to check that I'm happy with it. Off camera, I then did the remaining nails, and this was where I had a little bit of an issue with my pop-off method. On one of the nails, as I was filing, it popped off, so I ended up having to glue it back on. So it's a little bit tricky because I've seen so many nail techs use this pop-off method where they apply a base coat underneath their acrylic with no prep work so that you could pop them off, which is great for if you're practicing acrylics or you're doing nails for content. So last week's video, I did it with rubber base coat and top coat, and then done my acrylics, and it felt really sturdy. Even though I'd done no prep, it felt as though that rubber base coat really adhered to my natural nails, so they didn't pop off as easy as what I have seen. But then this week I decided to do 2 coats of top coat, so no prep, cuticle oil, massage it in, then 2 coats of top coat, and they popped off a lot easier. But the downside was one of them popped off during filing, so I had the faff of sticking it back on. So I'm still trying to play around. If you have any tips on the whole pop-off method for practicing acrylics, do let me know in the comments below. I'm thinking of maybe trying a regular base coat rather than a rubber base coat and then my top coat, and seeing if that makes a difference. But it's definitely been a great help for me, because part of the reason why I stopped doing acrylics and long acrylic designs was because I just can't wear them on myself. With work and typing, I find it too difficult. So a lot of the time I like to but I still love doing acrylic nails, so a lot of the time I want to have a quick and easy way of taking them off, and obviously it's long doing a full long acrylic set and then having to file them down and soak them off in acetone and all of that. So the pop-off method is definitely great for me to be able to get back into the swing of practicing them a little bit more, but I just need to find a method that works good for me. I used to have a really good peel off base coat, but I can't seem to get that same one anymore, which is such a shame. But anyway, this is what the nails looked like once I'd finished top coating and applied a little bit of cuticle oil. I can see lots of little imperfections in them, but I'm so pleased that I got out my acrylic brush and done another day's worth of practice. So do let me know what you thought of these in the comments below. I do have lots of older, better acrylic videos up on my channel, so do check those out. Thank you all so much for watching. Lots of love. Take care. Bye bye.